Okay, let's just dive right into this explainer. Look, we all really like to think of ourselves as these hyper rational machines, right? Perfectly executing life's grand business plan. But what if I told you your brain isn't a supercomputer at all? What if instead it's actually this chaotic, demanding, kind of borderline incompetent middle manager running the corporate office of your life? We're literally talking about a Michael Scott level of impulsive decision making happening right behind your eyes every single day. So, welcome to the ultimate corporate turnaround for your mind. Let's get into it.
It's a seriously valid question. Who is actually in charge up there? We all have that voice in our head, right? The logical you. That's the one who enthusiastically sets the 6 a.m. alarms, color codes the budget spreadsheets, and promises, swears really, to eat a kale salad for lunch today. But if we're being completely honest with ourselves, that logical you, yeah, they're just a beleaguered, completely overworked employee. They are desperately trying to keep up with the erratic manager who inevitably forces you to hit snooze 4 times, completely ignore the spreadsheet, and order a massive pepperoni pizza at 10 p.m. And the neuroscience totally backs this up. A staggering 90% of our decisions are entirely emotional, leaving only a measly 10% to actual logic. Your prefrontal cortex, that logical employee, is essentially just doing full-time PR for your amygdala, the emotional manager. Your rational mind isn't driving the car. No way. It's just sitting in the passenger seat narrating the trip and trying to mathematically justify all this sudden reckless swerves. Honestly, by the time you consciously think about a choice, your emotional manager has already processed millions of microsignals and made the decision for you.
To make matters even worse, this chaotic manager is, frankly, incredibly lazy. They delegate roughly 40% of your entire day to a part of the brain called the basal ganglia. Now, think of the basal ganglia as the brain's basement IT department. It just runs these ancient automated scripts without your conscious approval, turning a solid 40% of your life into pure autopilot. And it does this through deeply ingrained standard operating procedures, which we commonly call habits. So, yeah, nearly half the time, you aren't actually making choices at all.
Okay, moving on to Section 1, breaking the habit loop and auditing the manager's toxic SOPs. So, if we actually want to take back control of this corporate office, we absolutely have to start by auditing the manager's terrible automated systems. Every habit loop has 3 rigid parts: the cue, the routine, and the reward. Let's say you feel a sudden spike in stress. Okay, that's the cue. The manager panics and completely defaults to the routine, which is usually pulling out your phone for a little water cooler doom scroll. And third, the reward. You get a cheap, temporary dopamine hit. It is a perfectly functioning loop. It just happens to feature a terrible, unproductive routine that completely drains the company's time.
But here's the crucial point. You can't just fire the manager. And you absolutely cannot hit delete on these neural pathways. Once a habit loop forms, it is baked directly into the company infrastructure. It's a permanent highway in your brain. Your brain, well, it doesn't care if the habit helps or hurts you. It just blindly runs the program. So telling yourself to simply stop scrolling is exactly like telling a speeding train to just drive off the tracks. It literally doesn't work.
Instead, what we need to do is execute a dopamine detox from the inside out. You keep the exact same stress cue, right? And you keep the need for a reward, but you completely overwrite the routine. So, feel stressed? Drop and do 10 push-ups instead of opening Instagram. The physical exertion releases endorphins, which, by the way, is a much higher quality, longer-lasting chemical reward than a cheap social media dopamine hit. You experience the exact same physical stress relief, but you manage to trick the manager into authorizing an outcome that actually builds your health and productivity. It's a total game changer. All right, Section 2, managing decision fatigue. What happens when the manager's budget completely runs dry?
We all know that brutal 3 p.m. afternoon slump, where all your good intentions just completely vanish. This happens because your manager has a very finite daily budget of cognitive energy. It's a biological phenomenon known as decision fatigue or ego depletion. Every single micro choice you make, what to wear, what to eat for breakfast, when to fit in a workout, it all drains that daily budget. By the time the afternoon rolls around, the manager's account is completely overdrawn and they just start approving terrible, low-effort decisions.
Relying on sheer willpower to overcome this? That's a massive corporate liability. Willpower is quite literally like a muscle. It fatigues the more you use it. Highly successful CEOs do not rely on willpower to manage their erratic brains. They automate. There's a reason major tech CEOs famously wear the exact same outfit every single day. They eat the same breakfast. They automate the small stuff to ruthlessly protect their manager's cognitive budget for the decisions that actually impact the bottom line.
You can also aggressively protect your energy budget using a hilarious but incredibly effective tactic called strategic incompetence. I love this. Think of it as weaponized laziness. It essentially means purposefully being bad at non-essential tasks so others just stop asking you to do them. If you are conspicuously terrible at fixing the office printer, eventually people stop asking you to fix the printer. Apply this deliberate boundary to your daily life, and you keep your manager completely focused on the 20% of work that yields 80% of your actual results.
Which brings us to Section 3, the 90-second tantrum, handling HR violations.
Okay, so what happens when the manager gets completely overwhelmed, ignores all the new SOPs, and just has a total emotional meltdown? We're talking major HR violations here: blinding anger, sudden anxiety, deep frustration. For this, we rely on the fascinating work of neuroscientist Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor. She found that an emotion isn't a permanent state. It's actually a physical, chemical flood in your bloodstream that naturally dissipates in exactly 90 seconds, a minute and a half. That is literally all it takes for the physiological response of any emotion to physically clear out of your body.
The only reason an emotion ever lasts longer than 90 seconds is because we keep the circuit alive with our thoughts. We feed the fire. When you jump in and start overthinking, you're essentially just replying all to a panic email in your brain. So, when the manager throws a tantrum, use these steps. Notice the physical feeling, set a mental 90-second timer, and just watch the chemical wave pass. You literally let the manager cry it out in their office without jumping in and validating the panic.
Because emotions are data, not directives. That is such a profound operating principle. Your emotions are incredibly fast, but they're really just information on a dashboard. That 90-second pause between feeling an emotion and acting on it, that is exactly where your entire power lives. Creating that space is the ultimate form of emotional regulation. The manager's feelings are not binding orders you have to follow. You can acknowledge the fire alarm without unnecessarily evacuating the entire building.
Moving on to Section 4, taking back executive control and implementing the new HR policies. By consistently enforcing these new corporate policies, you are finally stepping up as the intentional CEO of your own mind. You've audited the company and laid down the law. You stop the erratic manager from running 40% of your life on toxic autopilot by upgrading your routines. You balance your cognitive budget by automating the trivial choices. And you handle those severe HR violations by letting the 90-second chemical fires just burn themselves out. You transition from a passive, beleaguered employee to the active designer of your own life.
And the mathematical ROI on this mental turnaround is honestly staggering. Look, you don't need a massive overnight restructuring of your entire personality. Actually, scratch that. You really shouldn't try to do that. Drawing on the compounding habits concept popularized by James Clear, if you get just 1% better at managing these internal systems every single day, the compound effect totally takes over. A 1% daily improvement makes you 37 times more effective in a single year. You just need to systematically rewrite one small procedure at a time. But as we implement this turnaround, we really have to ground ourselves in the ultimate control paradox. Yes, you are stepping up as the CEO of your internal mind, but you are not the CEO of the universe. You can only strictly control your own actions and reactions inside the four walls of your office. The outside world is an unpredictable, wild ocean. You aren't managing the ocean, you're just learning how to gracefully surf its waves. Master your habits. Protect your daily cognitive energy. Put your amygdala on a performance improvement plan and regulate those 90-second chemical fires. Everything else happening outside of your mind, that's just market volatility. It is completely out of your control, which means it's just commentary. You don't have to react to it, and you certainly don't have to let it dictate your internal company culture. So, as we wrap up this explainer today, I want to leave you with a question to really kickstart your own mental corporate turnaround. You have the tools, you understand the neuroscience, and you know exactly what that chaotic middle manager in your head is up to. So, what is the very first standard operating procedure you are going to rewrite today? The office is yours. Make it count.